Hello and welcome to Biology Career Insights, the podcast where we talk with experts from the field of biology to gain valuable insights into the careers and explore ways to navigate the job market in this ever evolving field. I'm your host, Dr. Manish Kumar. Today, we have the honor of being joined by a true visionary in the biotech world, Dr. Christian Tidona. Dr. Tidona is not only a highly accomplished biologist, but also a trailblazing entrepreneur. As the founder of the prestigious BioMed X Institute in Heidelberg, Germany, he has been at the forefront of igniting innovation at the intersection of academia and industry. Armed with a degree in biology and a doctoral degree in natural sciences from the esteemed University of Heidelberg, Dr. Tidona's passion for advancing scientific frontiers has been unwavering. Throughout his remarkable career, he has co-founded BioRN in Heidelberg, which is a leading cluster management organization driving biomedical innovation in Europe. Additionally, his contributions extend to the Heidelberg Institute for Stem Cell Technology and Experimental Medicine, called HiSTEM, exemplifying his commitment to transformative research. But that's not all. Dr. Tidona also serves on the board of directors of Yeda Research and Development, a world-renowned technology transfer organization at the prestigious Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. Beyond his impressive professional accomplishments, Dr. Tidona finds joy in his role as a devoted family man, cherishing the bonds of marriage and fatherhood. Christian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Manish, for having me.
So let's dive in straight away. What inspired you to be a scientist and entrepreneur, and how did you get started in the field?
Well, when I started studying in this beautiful city behind me, Heidelberg, which, I always had two hearts in my chest, one of a scientist and one of an entrepreneur. So on one hand, I'm a very curious person. I want to know how things work. But on the other hand, I have this passion for building something that will ultimately help people. So translational science and creating impact. And this is why at the end of my PhD, I decided to start my first company, and I've been starting companies ever since.
Wow, that's so amazing. But could you tell me about your educational background and your journey of being an entrepreneur, and how, when was in your childhood that you decided that you will pursue biology?
It was not decided in my childhood. It actually, I had so many interests that actually when I finished high school, I had no clue what to do. And what I did is in Germany at the time, you had to go to do military service. So I did my military service. I had a lot of time to think about what my next steps will be. And I just simply went back to my high school grades and picked the subject where I had the best grades, and that was biology. And I just started. So I didn't really have a plan at the time. But then very soon, these were the early 90s of the last century, long time ago. And these were the times where there was a molecular biology gold rush worldwide. So PCR is being discovered during that time, and also sequencing came along. And then finally, I decided to become a virus hunter. So I did my PhD in a lab of a very successful professor and mentor, Ghulam Reza Darai. He originally came from Iran, but was in Germany for a long time, 200 publications. And he was famous for identifying and characterizing completely new viruses nobody had ever described before. And I got excited about it. So I did my PhD in virology in his lab.
And when did the entrepreneurial bug hit you? It was during your PhD, or?
It was there more or less all the time, but then an opportunity came along. And also being at the university, I found that this is not really a place where I wanted to stay because as you might know, I mean, this is probably everywhere, politics play a very big role. When you're a professor, my professor didn't care too much about politics. And then suddenly when there was a new head of an institute, he found himself in the basement laboratory. And I decided for myself, this is not a place where I want to be. So, and at that time, my mentor was involved in a startup in Regensburg, not too far away from Heidelberg. with a completely new technology, the Luminex technology, and they were looking for a managing director who runs it. So I said, why not? And I had this very big punchline of my first startup: 100 tests and 1 drop of blood. I mean, there were other people later on who had the same idea and ended up in jail. I did not end up in jail.
I know that debacle in Stanford. Yeah, like this Stanford graduate, right? Like, yeah.
Elizabeth Holmes, right? So
Yeah.
And so at my time, it was even more difficult to do, but I learned a lot. And then moved on to my next startup, which went even better, which was in Heidelberg. And then focused for the rest of my entrepreneurial life on translational research, so bridging the gap between academic research and the pharmaceutical industry.
So, Christian, I've seen a lot of people, especially PhDs, have a lot of interest about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But when it comes to, starting it, it's not always easy, because they will always, either they will, these are all excuses, or can also be a general issue. It's about the funding, So how was it like, did you inherited a large sum of money, or how did you did you bootstrap the company, or did you reached out to a venture capitalist? How did you, go about it?
Yeah, I'm actually from a poor family. I didn't have this luck of having a very rich family that can fund my startups. My dad was one of the immigrants during the 60s, where there was a green card program for workers from Italy and Turkey, and my dad came from southern Italy. So our family never had a lot of money. No, you're touching on a very important point, which is technically you would expect universities to educate people for life, but they actually educate them only for one aspect of life, which is the academic career. And they do not help you too much to prepare you to start your own company or to work in industry. And this is why I'm also teaching at the university for a long time now and helping early career scientists to formulate or translate an academic research finding into something that could be a startup pitch. This is one of these very essential qualities. When you want to collect money, you need to explain what you want to do, and you need to explain it in a way which is compelling for an investor. So that's one of the things. And also, it's not for everyone, right? So starting a company is only one aspect of what you can do with the PhD in the life sciences. There's lots of opportunities in industry, and this is also what later on we decided to do at BioMedics, help these early career scientists to get this orientation, whether they are academic people, industry people, or startup people, and then in a way where they always can go back to academia and become professors. I think that's the main challenge. If you switch to industry or your startup and you fail or you don't like it, it's very difficult to go back.
Yeah. So I will, take a deep dive on the Biomedics, journey. But before that, just highlight your process of starting up. Like when you started up, your mind would have been filled with confusion, right? Like it's kind of a divorcing a field. Like you are leaving your academic successful career. Like as you said, you were in a prestigious lab. So how did you feel about it? You always have your, heart there somewhere in the science, and when you are kind of going into a different path. So how did you go about it?
Well, the secret sauce is, in order not to make all these mistakes over and over again, ask someone who has done it before and was successful and can prevent you from making all the same mistakes. And these are mentors. I was very fortunate in every phase of my life that I had very experienced mentors I could ask and who helped me to not make those big mistakes over and over. Of course, you still make mistakes, but not all of them, right? So that's very important. So that's the first thing. Find someone who is successful, who has done this before. If you want to start a company, it should better be an entrepreneur who has done this before and who can help you shape the business idea in a way that it really has a chance to succeed. Because as a young person, there's so many risks you don't see because you don't have this experience. And many of these startups that are going out, especially in Europe, where people are not really educated with entrepreneurship programs to start companies, many of these startups don't really have a chance because they're making all these basic mistakes, and there's no way. And especially in biotech, where you need huge amounts of money to start your own company, as compared to an app. If someone wants to build an app, you build the app more or less in your garage, and then you become a millionaire if it's working. In biotech, when you want to develop a drug, minimum investment is a couple of $100 million. So where the heck do you get them from as a young person? It's very difficult.
So yeah, that's what, like, where the heck should one reach out to, how to get that? Like, because, as you rightly said, like, building, like, the investors sometimes also expect you to have a prototype, which is quite easy in the other fields, but in biotech, as you rightly said, there are like inherent problems. So if one wants to have a, wants to have a biotech startup, how to go about it?
You need a series of important ingredients. First of all, you need to get someone on board, as I said, who's done this before, either as a mentor or as a CEO, because these amounts of money you're collecting, if you have zero experience in starting biotechs, it's not very likely that an investor will give you the money, because it's all about showing credibility that you will return the money with a premium in 5 years from now. So this is the first one. So you need someone on the team who is experienced and has track record. The second is, it needs to be a very well-rounded business idea, which is not just looking at solving a difficult scientific problem, but which in the end will also solve a real-world problem where people are willing in the end to pay enough for the product or service you're generating to get back the money you spent in order to build that product or service. And this is not so easy to do, because as scientists, we're curious, we want to solve big problems, and then we are there with a solution that is looking for an actual real-world problem. And most of the startups actually fail because they don't find a real-world problem to solve. So it's not that technologies don't work, but the technologies don't deliver anything that will allow you to make money. That's the second big part. And that usually comes together with this mentor or experienced person on board, because he or she will tell you, this is going to work or this is not going to work. And what I would really recommend to everyone who is a first-time biotech entrepreneur, participate in major business plan competitions worldwide, because that will allow you meet like-minded people, your idea gets challenged from all kinds of perspectives, and you get a lot of visibility towards investors and mentors, and in the end, even prize money. So for example, I've been involved in the world's largest student business plan competition, which is the RISE business plan competition in Houston, Texas. And every year there's 42 finalists from around the world, startup teams, all still students. And they receive so much feedback, so many new contacts during this experience, that most of them at the end actually have all the ingredients you need to be a successful entrepreneur.
Amazing. That was really insightful. So Christian, now we'll touch about, the creation of BioMed X. I think a lot of people, in Heidelberg, are very happy to have BioMed X in their campus. So, tell us about that journey. How did it happen? And did you bootstrap, or did you, reach out to investors? How did that journey happen? Yes.
Yeah, and it's a good question. So BioMed X is a very, very different, it's not the typical biotech startup, because I've done this before 15 years before I started Biomedics, and I wanted to build something which maybe surpasses my lifespan and will be able to create impact on the long run, which means I couldn't use venture capital, because when you use venture capital, at some point you need to sell your company and move on to the next one. And I wanted to build something which, like, for example, Merck in Darmstadt is more than 350 years old, still in the hands of the family. So how can you build these mid-sized companies which made Germany's economy so strong? So this was the question. So no venture capital. Second, also, if you want to do something sustainably, you cannot use government money, because once the government money sooner or later runs out, and then what's next? So I wanted to do this in a way that made economic sense from the beginning. So the opportunity came along because I have co-developed something from Merck, the German Merck in Darmstadt, which I mentioned, which is called the Merck Innovation Cup. And I'm still running this with a colleague from Merck, Uli Betz, with whom I've started this more than 13 years ago. And it's a bootcamp format where we brought together top talents from around the world. And then, so in this bootcamp, help them to generate new project proposals, outside the box proposals for the company's future business. And then on the last day, they receive a prize for the best idea. And that's the bootcamp. And after we've done this the second time, I sat for lunch with the former head of research of Merck, Bernd Kirschbaum, and said, Bernd, we put so much effort into identifying talent. We bring them here, we torture them in the bootcamp for 5 days. Then we give them a cash prize and send them back home. So why don't we keep them for a while and let them implement their projects? And then Bernd said, well, if you come up with a viable business plan, I might sponsor the first 3 projects for 10 million. And this was when Biomedics started. So I put together this business plan. We set up the first 3 boot camps for the first 3 teams, and that was the start of Biomedics. So I didn't need external capital, actually.
And it's in a very similar format, like you conduct boot camps and then you kind of, that makes sense to me. But Christian, just going a little backwards, so how did that relationship with Merck happen? Because you said you were like, right after your PhD, you started your own company. And also tell us about, the failures and the successes that you had before starting Biomedics, so that,
Yeah. So let me put it that way. Before someone gives you this kind of money, you need trust. You need a trustful relationship. Absolutely. And I think the time period when I was able to build this trust was during the time when I was heading BioRN. You mentioned also in the introduction, which is the local cluster management company, which brings together all the startups, all the large pharma companies, small companies, and also all the research institutions in our area around Heidelberg. And I was coordinating something that is called the Spitzencluster, so in English, leading edge cluster. This was a national competition of the federal government of Germany, which tried to identify in 2008, the 5 strongest high-tech regions in Germany, and was awarding a grant of 40 million euros, 40, if you could match it with the same amount of capital from the local industry. So at the time, I was in charge with writing the proposal for our region. And then, long story short, we actually won this competition. And then I was there with an 80 million public-private research and development fund, coordinating research projects between academia and industry. And I think we did some things right in this process, which resulted in a very large network over those 8 years. And this was the basis to start something like Biomedics, where you don't need venture capital, but you need actual customers who are willing to put significant money into your first project. And before that, of course, all of these startups and companies had more or less failures, because it's so difficult to do. The one after this diagnostics company, which obviously failed, I was involved in a cell therapy company called Cytonet, which was a spin-off of Roche, and also the first biotech investment of our local big family office, Dietmar Hopp, one of the founders of SAP, who since then has invested, I think, in at least 20 different biotech startups. And with Cytonet, we went up to phase 3 clinical trials with a new therapeutic. But in the end, also it failed because there was no market, no pharma company wanted to buy this company, which had a very complicated product.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people always see, the success part. They don't see how much perseverance it takes to kind of build a successful company. But that is the crux of this kind of conversation. So Christian, once you kind of, how how did you create BioRN to start with? When like you were doing something else, you were involved with Cytonet, and then how did BioRN happen in?
Yeah, I was actually called by a mentor at the time, was Jürgen Schweitzer. He was the German head of Roche, based in Mannheim. And he called me and said, there is this public grant, federal grant. It's about 40 million. And it's about our ability to put together a plan which makes economic sense for the region. And would you mind helping us? And I said, sounds interesting. So let's sit together and discuss. And then I got really a support from quite a few senior people from our region who said, you go and do it, develop a strategy, we'll support it. And then I developed a strategy, which of course was obviously perceived as novel, where for the first time in a major government-funded program, industry was in the lead, especially large industry. As you might know, in Heidelberg, we have a very high density of big pharmaceutical companies with research sites, and we were able to bring all of them together behind the same strategy, how to develop our region. And that, in the end, resulted in us winning this competition, even against competitors like Munich or like Stuttgart. And actually the final selection was a pitch in front of a very highly ranked jury in Berlin. And interestingly, we had all these senior people from the university and also from industry who joined me for this pitch in front of this committee. And we were actually practicing our pitch very well, so that the committee, after a while, when they grilled us with very difficult questions, they said, I mean, it seems like you guys have been knowing each other for decades. So how the heck? And you know, this is how we won this, because we were a great team. And all the other competing clusters looked a little more what I'm calling a predator community, that are only collaborating because that way they get access to government funding. But in our case, it was a bunch of friends who had a very big plan for our region and came together and wanted to support this plan. So this makes all the difference.
This is so amazing. This is so amazing. So what I can like take home message, I think, till now is, number one, mentors, having really great mentors. Number two, I think participating in business plans, being open. And I think in your case, you were very well networked. So networking is also amazing, having a great team, networking. And fourth is always never giving up or, perseverance. So this is the crux of entrepreneurship.
Manish, it's a very, very important finding, right? Whenever people are successful in startups, it looks very easy. It looks like they're genius or so. That's not the case, not in a single case. That's the case. I mean, I know quite a few entrepreneurs. The successful entrepreneurs have just tried one more time, right? That's the point. And while the unsuccessful ones have given up somewhere on the way.
Wow. That's amazing. So now, going back to Biomedics, tell us more about, I'm very well aware of what Biomedics does, but for the audience, tell us what BioMed X Institute is and what it does.
Yes. So let's maybe go back to what we discussed earlier, how startups are generated normally, right? So crazy guy like myself at the time in academia has an idea, builds something around it, and then looks for a problem in the real world to solve with his solution, right? And that's the main reason why these biotechs fail. So my idea was, why don't we turn this process upside down? Why don't we talk first with what I would call the customer of a biotech startup, which is big pharma? They're usually the ones who acquire those companies. Ask them what they really, really want and what they're willing to pay for it if it would exist. And then ask the world's best scientists to come up with ideas how to solve this particular problem. So it's sort of a built-in product market fit from the beginning.
Wow.
And also do it in a way where you get the best of the best and move them in one spot. So the way how we do this is, once we have identified one of these really big research problems with our pharma partners, we call them challenges. We publish those challenges on our crowdsourcing platform worldwide at the best universities and research institutions, and invite early career academic scientists to apply by submitting a very original project proposal, how to solve this particular problem. And usually we get between 200, 300, 400 proposals from 60, 70, 80 countries, really truly global. And then together with our pharma partner, we pick the 15 brightest ones and fly them in for a 5-day boot camp. For example, we had one last week in Heidelberg. So we have all these super bright minds coming from all around the world. They see each other for the first time on the first day, and then we help them to associate in 5 competing groups, and then to convert this collection of academic ideas into something we would call a truly brilliant project proposal. So not just a very elegant experimental approach, but also a very solid implementation strategy with deliverables, with milestones, so the things you usually don't learn at university. And on the last day, they present in front of a jury, which includes the senior management of the sponsoring pharma company. Last week, there was Merck. Mm-hmm. And if we agree on a winner, this winner then is relocated with their families to Heidelberg. We organize visa, jobs for their spouses, kindergarten, sports, new homes, schools, whatever they need. And then they live and work for up to 5 years in our institute on the campus of the university. And they get very intense mentorship from mentors from the sponsoring pharma company, but also from academic mentors, so that over time they build something which hopefully at the end of the project will be a starting point for a new drug discovery program that will ultimately help patients. So that's the model.
Wow, that is so unique model, because, and do you think, Christian, like any other institute does the same? Like is there any other startup which does on a similar,
We are monitoring this quite closely, but so far, interestingly, because usually if something works, people start copying it. And so far there is no copy of Biomedics. And we've now started to actually bring our model to other parts of the world. So 2 years ago, we have started a consortium called Ion Labs in Israel, in Rehovot, right next to the Weizmann Institute. This year, we started a BioMed X Institute in New Haven, Connecticut, right next to Yale University. And we have the first 2 projects there on site as well. So we're now at the point where we can scale the model because it's obviously it works, and more pharma companies want to work with us.
Amazing. So, yeah. How does the work, tell us some successful stories about BioMed X Institute. What has it been able to deliver so far, and how does it help the broader public in general?
Yeah, it's in we are active in multiple therapeutic areas. So, and this is the beauty of the concept, right? You have all these scientists who are experts in completely different fields, and we all foster collaboration between all those teams to help each other, because that's part of our core values is we want people to help each other. And so we have teams in the field of cancer research, of autoimmune diseases, of neurosciences. So things like we had a project in Alzheimer's, we had a project in schizophrenia, we had a project in depression. And then also teams that work with artificial intelligence tools. So how to predict what a new molecule will do in a patient, or teams that develop sensors for diagnostics, or sensors for measuring analytes in humans, right? So and all of them collaborate. So one of the examples I can mention maybe is you might know that COPD, severe lung disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Mm-hmm. Is something that comes from inhaling smoke or particles. And it was an idea for a long time that when you inhale smoke, that this smoke, when it comes in contact with your cells in the lung, that this actually changes the so-called epigenetics of these cells. It reprograms the cells, so that in the end, you start getting holes, emphysema in your lung, and then most of the time, it's progressive, and then people die sooner or later.
Yeah.
And the question, this crazy idea was, if these particles you inhale change the epigenome, maybe there is a way to reprogram the cells back to normal, so that diseased tissue becomes healthy tissue again. And these epigenetic readers, writers, and erasers, so these molecules that are doing this in the nucleus of every cell, they have not really been exploited as potential drug targets by the pharmaceutical industry, because they're very difficult to tackle. So a company called Boehringer Ingelheim, also German, very successful family-owned pharma company, came to us and said, why don't you dig a little deeper into the epigenetics in the context of COPD and also some other lung diseases, which are very. And then we were able, in a 4-year project, we were able to deliver actually new biology in the lung of COPD patients, which then led to drug discovery program in Boehringer Ingelheim. So this is how we deliver. And then there were similar programs where we developed sensor platforms, for example, for new diagnostic sensors with Roche Diagnostics, and this ended up in 3 patent applications. And interestingly also, this is what we maintained until now in all of our framework programs with our pharma partners. We also publish, because some of our scientists might not, after all, they might decide to go back to academia. And you only can do this if you have a continuous publication record. And this is why, meanwhile, we have roughly 60 publications in peer-reviewed journals since we were started, which allows then in some of the group leaders or postdocs who find out pharma industry is not for me, to go back and become professors.
Mm-hmm. That is so amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, one always has this choice of whether, like, if he wants to move back again to academia, he has the choice, because, I mean, you are not prohibiting somebody from publishing there.
Of course not. We're even fostering people. So they need to come up, group leaders need to come up in the first months of their projects with a publication plan so that we make sure they publish. Right? It's very important.
Amazing. And Christian, tell us also about the challenges that you face at Biomedics. What are the challenges?
Well, it's for all companies. When you grow, you need processes. Mm-hmm. And the Biomedics 10 years ago was a completely different Biomedics from today. Right? When we started, everything was improvised. I remember still with our head of operations and HR at the time, her title was Chief Happiness Officer, Yvonne. She was dragging me to the IKEA store to buy our first furniture for our first lab, which was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And we're actually putting all these furniture pieces together and building everything from scratch, which improvising all the time. Which, of course, once you grow to our size now, where we have close to 80 people, and we're working with human samples, and we're working with human genetic information and all these things, you need all those processes of a more mature company, which is very tricky to implement on the go, because then you have to take freedom away from people, and you need to make every process more structured, and people need more and more standard operating procedures and play by the books. And of course, at the same time, you should not lose the entrepreneurial spirit. And this is very challenging to do. So far, we managed. I don't know where the limit is, where we lose this and become just a big organization like a pharma company. Hopefully never, at least not in my lifetime. But it's a very difficult thing to do. So growing, becoming more process-oriented, and keeping this entrepreneurial spirit, that's very challenging.
Amazing. So yeah, coming to one of the most interesting sections of the podcast, because students aspiring biologists, they always want to know about which skills and qualities they could develop, And in your case, you can perhaps tell us how one can develop the qualities of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, technically, it's something you already have. I don't think you can learn how to become an entrepreneur. It's in you somehow. And it's more or less for, let's say, on average, 3 to 5% of all people. It's distributed evenly across the globe. So it's not really a virus. It's not infectious. You cannot catch it. You have it or you don't. And the interesting thing is, in some families, you will find people who are super entrepreneurial and others are complete non-entrepreneurs. So this must be some sort of a genetic component which makes you tolerate these crazy ups and downs you have as an entrepreneur much better than other people. Because if you don't tolerate this type of up and down stress, you get a heart attack very early. But you need to develop those qualities, and this is something where, at least in Europe, the universities have failed so far in really sort of identifying these 3 to 5% potential entrepreneurs, and then giving them all the tools they need in order to become successful entrepreneurs. And what we do at the moment is we foster in German or European universities, we foster entrepreneurship, but we do this via government subsidies. And we do it in a way where these entrepreneurs are trained by consultants that have never started a company before. And then they get government payments by the hour, which is, doesn't really make sense. You would need serial entrepreneurs that are really experienced, who then mentor all those teams and pick the right ones and support them and help them. So this is something we need to work a little more. At Biomedics, at least you get exposed to entrepreneurship and leadership. People can participate in the scientist entrepreneur course we're doing twice a year. And also, we're encouraging people also to apply at our ION labs in Israel, which is entirely focused on startups. So in order to learn or become really an entrepreneur in the biomedics context, we have this ION labs in Israel, which is very different from biomedics in Heidelberg and now in the US also. If you win a bootcamp in Heidelberg or in New Haven, you will become a full-time employee of our BioMed X Institute, and you will get a research grant. If you win a bootcamp at our ION labs in Israel, you will become the first employee and shareholder of your own company. And you will not get a research grant, but an investment into your startup. And this is also something, being registered on our platform, whenever we publish a new call for application for ION Labs incubator, then you can apply with your profile, and then and we publish one of those calls once a quarter. And then in this consortium in Israel, we have actually not just one, but 4 different pharmaceutical companies who are supporting every single startup, which is Merck, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Teva. And also we have a tech partner, Amazon, AWS, and all these startups in Israel are very much focused around artificial intelligence for drug discovery and development. So we cover this spectrum between someone who is more inclined towards an industry career or someone who is more inclined towards a startup.
Amazing. Just taking the liberty to also ask this question, because, you operate both in the US and, in Europe right now. And of course, the entrepreneurial mindset is much more, in the US, and also the ecosystem is much evolved. So what does, Europe or particularly in Germany needs to do as, as the policy makers, what they need to do to kind of get there? What are the constraints here? Yeah.
Change the basic mindset and culture, which is probably not going to happen in my lifetime. It's the mindset of, let me put it that way. Once you have a social security net, which is so sophisticated, like in Europe, where whatever you do, if you fail, you will always have enough to eat, you will have a place to sleep, you will have access to the media, you will have transportation, and this is guaranteed for everyone. So there's no way in most European countries how you can get to a point where you really have to collect your food from the trash can and sleep under the bridge. I mean, there is people who are doing it, but that's not because of the system. The system provides enough so that everyone can have a decent living. And once you are in such a system, you don't have to improvise, and you don't have to sort of make sure that you find some way by yourself to make money. And if you don't get a job, you start a company and then you just do it. And this is why Israel, for example, is such a prolific startup nation with thousands and thousands of startups, because they're isolated in a country that does not really have resources except what's in the brain of people. And then if you don't have a job, you start your own company, and then you do something, and then you make money somehow and make a living. So this is some kind of a mindset which is more or less, that's at least my assumption, incompatible with a very dense social net. I'm not suggesting we should sort of eliminate our social security, which we have in Europe, but we should at least encourage places where there's a lot of money, like, for example, the pension funds, to invest into this asset class of venture capital, which, as you know, is also in most European countries is not the case. in the US, a certain percentage of the pension funds goes into venture capital, and these are amounts of money which are beyond imagination. Right, it's a huge amount of money, and this money is not available in Europe, not at all. And also it's about critical mass. So in the United States, there's if you want to do biotech, there's 2 places or 3 or 4 places maximum where you can do this. It's Boston, it's San Francisco, it's maybe New York, it's maybe San Diego, but that's it. These are very thin layers at the East and West Coast. Everything else is tier 2 or tier 3. But these very thin strips at the East and West Coast, which by the way, more than 70% of the entrepreneurs and company owners were not born in the United States, are supporting this entire ecosystem with wealth. And this is a situation which in Europe is not compatible with a federalistic mindset, where everyone is supposed to have the same, and where wealth is supposed to be distributed equally, more or less. This means this was also what came back to us when we had won this leading edge cluster competition in Heidelberg, where we said, now that we had this ignition with the 80 million, what's next? Is there another follow-up grant to make those 5 regions, or in the end it was 15 regions, even better and support them even more? They said, no, you had just, now we put into the rural areas. And this is a situation where you generate a disease which I call fragmentitis. So Europe is has fragmentitis. Europe has this disease called fragmentitis. So everything is highly fragmented because every little village wants its own biotech cluster and wants to get support, which does not work. A government, even a society like United States, which is very much focused on elites, can only afford one, what I call world-class cluster per 20 million inhabitants. World-class cluster is a place that's on the top 10 list of the top students of the world where they want to pursue a career and be creative. So translate that to Germany, 80 million inhabitants, there can only be 4 places where the government puts all the money in order to generate something like a Silicon Valley. It's never going to happen in Europe. So it's distributed evenly, and it's like there's nowhere is critical mass.
Yeah, that's fragmentitis, as you rightly
fragmented. I mean, there's a little difference in France, because France, for example, is a very centralized country, but still in Paris, there is not enough critical mass to be in the top or to be on the top 10 list of the top students of the world where they want to pursue a career. So there is a couple of places in Europe that could have a chance, like London and Paris, maybe also Berlin when it comes to digital health, but it's all subcritical when you compare it to Boston.
That's so insightful, Christian, because I've always liked to believe that, once you have your basic necessities guaranteed by the system, everyone should be an entrepreneur because you have the capacity to take risk, but it's the otherwise.
Opposite is the opposite, because there's no necessity, right? There is no risk that you will really, really fall to the bottom of the pyramid and need to pick your food from the trash can.
Wow. So tell us, Christian, what advice would you give to biology students who are considering a career in biotech entrepreneurship, and what are some of the most important things they should keep in mind as they pursue this path?
Yep. So depending on where they are, which university, they should find an entrepreneurship program. There are some, there are not many, but there are some. And then participate in those programs in order to find like-minded people. And then maybe with these like-minded people, participate in some of the international top business plan competitions, just to collect experience, to grow your network. LinkedIn is a very important tool. I would recommend every scientist to maintain and grow a very impressive LinkedIn profile. Brand yourself as an expert in a certain field. At the moment, what's super hot is artificial intelligence and drug discovery and development. So if you're a bioinformatician, everyone will want you in their organization to help them to solve these big problems. So make sure you're seen and you network. And then, of course, find a mentor. Go to conferences. And if you see someone you admire or you would be interested in learning something from, just wait at the side of the stage, shake their hand and said, my name is XYZ. I have this great idea. Would you have 5 minutes for a coffee with me? And usually there is no experienced person who would say, no, I'm not going to talk with you. Of course, they will talk with you because there's no greater pleasure in giving back to the next generation. So make use of it.
Yeah, this is so true because, I will tell you my own thing, I've always been hesitant to reach out to people prior, assuming that they would be too busy. Why would they answer you and stuff like that? But this is all in our mind. Once you reach out, most people are actually, as you really said, like glad to give back. And I'm so happy, Christian, that you gave me your time for this podcast. So I'm so thankful. Yes. Yes. So another question, Christian, now that you are a successful entrepreneur running companies, so do you always also invest in startups? And for investing, and if you do, like for investing purposes, what are your key criteria to say evaluate incoming ideas on? And are there any specific advice in this context that you would like to give, and how can one reach it? So,
yeah. So I'm not a typical investor. So I'm not investing in startups to make money. This is not part of my business. I have enough food to eat, so I don't need a unicorn, whatever a unicorn is. No, what I'm looking for is young entrepreneurs that are smart, that are coachable, that have a big vision, and who are in a field where I feel I can contribute and I can help. What I don't like is I get lots of requests for sitting on boards. Doesn't really make sense. If I cannot contribute, I will not accept. But there's some few occasions where I meet with young entrepreneurs. We connect with each other. We see that we share values, and we see that I might be able to help with my network to make the startup successful. Then I usually participate in one way or the other. But that's rare, and it's not systematic. It's serendipitous. People can contact me anytime. My mobile number and also my phone number are on the Biomedics website, so people can contact me. So please don't spam me with WhatsApp. It's probably not going to help, but sending me a nice email or sending me a nice request over LinkedIn is always a good way out.
Amazing. And finally, Christian, apart from science and entrepreneurship, tell us more about your hobbies.
Oh, my hobby is what I'm doing every day. Is helping early career people to grow and to become successful. Unfortunately, over the last 2 years, I had 7 eye surgeries. So my eyes, I had cataract and then retina detachment and so on. So one of my last hobbies was playing golf, which doesn't really work anymore. So after those surgeries, I stopped my golf club membership. So that's not. But last year I took a course in beekeeping, and I'm planning next year, starting next summer, to start beekeeping at home. So that might become my next hobby.
And you're based your home is also in Heidelberg, right?
It's upriver. You go this way, upriver, and then you'll reach me in about 15 minutes upriver from Heidelberg.
Wow. So Christian, I will respect your time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. It has been a pleasure talking with you.
Well, it's a great pleasure, Manish. Thank you so much for having me, and good luck for your show.
Thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you for tuning to Biology Career Insights. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to get the latest episode delivered right straight to your device. See you next time. Bye-bye. Bye, Christian. Bye.
Bye, Manish. Bye-bye.